am so busy.
All right, so here we go. Number one, which are exponential? If they are exponential, state if they are growth or decay, state the rate of growth or decay, and state the initial value. So let's start. If you didn't get notes, they're back there in the bin. I don't know if there's any more, otherwise you gotta get them on Schoology. Now, the first thing I want to do is go through, Jacob. Huh? Hurry up. Actually, can't wait till lunch.
I mean, I've been waiting for.
Go.
Thank you.
First thing we're gonna do is go through and pick out the ones that are exponential, okay? We're gonna pick out the ones that are exponential. So, what do you remember about your BFF exponential function? What did it look like in terms of the equation? What was the equation? Yeah, that was the picture. What was the equation? Y equals e to the x. And the key is something to the x. So when I look at problem A, do I have something to the x? Yep, exponential. How about B? Yep, exponential. How about C? No. C is actually it's a quadratic, it's a parabola. It is not an exponential, because if you're exponential, you are a number to the x power. Okay? So what about D? Yep. What about E? No. E is a no, because to be exponential, you have to be a number to the x power. And this is an x to the x power, right? So we have to be a number to the x power. So E is not. All right, what about F? Yes. F is indeed an exponential. Okay, so now we've marked the ones that are exponential. So now we have to go back. If they are exponential, state if they are growth or decay. Well, if you look at problem A, the thing that's being raised to the power is 1.23. What happens if you multiply something by 1.23? Does it get bigger or does it get smaller if you multiply it by 1.23? It gets bigger. If you multiply something by 1, it doesn't change. But if you multiply it by something bigger than 1, it will grow. So A is a growth problem because the number that's being raised to the x is bigger than 1, okay? Now, what about B?
Decay.
B is a decay because we're multiplying by something less than 1. So the key is the number that's being raised to the x. That's the key. It's called the base. The number that's being raised to the x. If it's bigger than 1, we're growing. If it's less than 1, we are decaying. Okay. The next one that was exponential was D. Growth or decay? Growth. Why? Because the number that we're raising to the power is bigger than 1. And then F. Decay. Because the number that we're raising to the power is less than 1. Okay? Now, next part of the question. State the rate of growth and decay. Now, how did we tell if it was growth or decay? What did we look at? We looked at the number that was to the x power, right? And the rule is if that number is bigger than 1, it's growth. If it's less than 1, it's decay. The amount that it is bigger than 1 by is the growth rate. So when I look at letter A, that number, 1.23, is 0.23 bigger than 1. So that's a 23% growth. So equation A represents 23% growth. because 1.23 is 0.23, 23%, bigger than 1. All right, so now look at B. B we said was decay. Why is it decay? Because 0.83 is less than 1. How much less than 1? 0.17. So this is a 17% decay. The amount that you are bigger than 1 is your growth. The amount that you are less than 1 is your decay. So what about D? We said it was growth. What's its growth rate? 2%. 0.02 is 2%. So that represents a 2% growth. And what about F? 8% decay. Kids, we're raising 0.92 to the X. 0.92 is less than 1. It is 0.08 less than 1. That's 8% decay. And finally, state the initial value. In every exponential growth or decay problem, you have a starting value. You're starting here and you're either growing, or you're starting here and you are decaying. The initial value is the number out in front. So remember, so far we've only looked at the thing to the X, that number, so important. But the initial value, the starting number of people, or the starting amount of money, or the starting number of bacteria, whatever it is we're growing or decaying, the initial value is that number out in front. So what's the initial value in A? 3. I started with 3. The initial value in B? A half. The initial value in D? 100. And the initial value in F? 3.6. Exponential functions look like this. Something times a number to a power. If this number is bigger than 1, we're growth. If it's less than 1, we're decay. We already talked about all that. This is your starting value. This is what we call the initial value, beginning point. So now what you are expected to do is write your own equation given these two ordered pairs. So we're going to write an equation that looks like this. It looks like A and B and D and F. Those are all exponential equations. But it has to go through, the curve has to go through these 2 points. Now, I want you to start with the point that has a 0 in it. I promise you're always going to have one. If I'm writing a problem, you're always going to get a problem that has a 0 in it. One of the points has a 0. Keep in mind, this is a point. So X is 0 and Y is 2. So I'm going to come up here to my general format, and I'm going to put 2 in for the Y and 0 in for the X. Now there's a lot of letters right here. Pay attention. Y goes in for Y, X goes in for X. What's B to the 0? B to the 0 is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. If you took out your calculator and typed in 15 raised to the 0 power, it would say 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So what's this? 1. So doesn't this say 2 equals A times 1? Which means A equals 2? So in my equation, my initial value is 2. A is 2. I figured that out using the point that has a 0 in it. Now what do you think I'm going to do?
Plug in the other one.
Now I'm going to go to the other point. I'm going to go to the other point right here. And this is an X and this is a Y. So 6 equals 2 times b to the first. Remember, your point is X and Y. So we're putting in Y and X. Well, what's b to the first? B to the first is not 1. What's anything raised to the first power? Itself. So this is 6 equals 2b. So I'll divide by 2 and it looks like b equals 3. So my equation, my answer, the goal that I had, y equals 2 times 3 to the x. Now please, never multiply these together. This is not 6 to the x. These are two separate things. That one has an x, this one doesn't. This is your equation. 2 times 3 to the x. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing, exactly. We're going to go through exactly the same steps, but this time our points are these. Okay, so what do I do first? How do I start? Repeat the process right here. Starting with this right there. So what do I do first?
Plug in the first x and y for the
Plug
0.
in the point, the x and the y that includes the 0. You want the one that includes the 0. So 1/2 equals a times b to the 0. Putting in 1/2 for the y and 0 for the x. Now what's the beauty of that? What happens when I do that? What's b to the 0? 1. So doesn't this just say 1/2 equals a? So now, I know a is 1/2, so now I have 1/2 b to the x. And halfway there, I just need to figure out what b is. How will I do that?
Plug in 2a.
Plug in the other point where x is 2 and y is 8. Yes. No, it's gonna start in about 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll just turn it. Okay, he's the only one, okay, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so where am I here? I'm at, ready to plug in my point, 2, 8. So 8 equals 1/2 b to the second? Now I need to solve that, so what shall I do about this?
Divide half.
Well, I could divide by 1/2, it's
Multiply
probably
by 2.
easier just to multiply by 2, right? That'll get rid of that, so I'll times both sides by 2. So 16 equals b squared.
Square
So it looks like b equals 4. So then I write my answer, remembering that a and b are separate numbers. So y equals 1/2 times 4 to the x. My a was 1/2 and my b was 4. Do not ever multiply these together. They are two separate numbers. When we wrote our general format, see how they're two separate numbers? They stay two separate numbers. with the times in between them. All right? Try C, see how far you can get with C. We're doing the same thing, but now our points are these. So some of you are just doing nothing. What should we all be doing right now? Taking this point and plugging it in here. So 6 equals A times B to the 0. So what happens? A equals 6, because that's just 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1, so A equals 6. So we have Y equals 6 times B to the X. Because we figured out A was 6. Have you noticed that A always just turns out to be that number? Yeah, that always happens, always. So you don't have to go through this if you can remember that. You can go straight to that. You know A is going to be 6. So now 3/8 equals 6 times B to the 4th. Now I'm going to multiply by 1/6 because it's a fraction. This is a fraction. And remember that dividing by 6 is the same as timesing by 1/6. So B to the 4th equals 3/48. 1 times 3, 6 times 8. Does 3/48 reduce?
No.
To what? How many times does 3 go into 48? 16. So this really says B to the 4th equals 1/16. How do I solve that? No. I need to solve for B, so how do I get B by itself? I have to 4th root. What's the 4th root of 1/16? Not 1/4. The square root would be 1/4. The cube root, or excuse me, the 4th root is 1/2. The 4th root of 1 is 1, and the 4th root of 16 is 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. So my answer is 6 times 1/2 to the X. All right, one more, then we'll go to lunch. Here are our points, 0, 10, and 3, 80/27. I am not afraid of fractions. All right, so what do I know right off the bat?
10 is
I know A is 10. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and work it out. You do not have to, but just in case there are people out there who are a little bit, confused, A is 10. A is always gonna be the y-intercept, the number that's attached to the 0. The initial value is always gonna be the y-intercept. So I'm starting now with 10 times b to the x. Y equals 10 times b to the x. So 80/27 equals 10 times b to the 3rd. solve this, so I'm gonna need to get rid of that 10 right there.
Multiply by 1/10.
You have a choice. You can divide by 10. I'm gonna multiply by 1/10 because since there's a fraction over here, that's easier for me. But dividing by 10 is the same as timesing by 1/10. How many times does 10 go into 80?
8.
So 8 over 27 is b cubed. How do I solve that? Cube root. Just like over there, we fourth rooted. What's the cube root of 8?
2.
2.
2 over 3.
And the cube root of 27 is 3. So b is 2/3. And our answer is y equals 10 times 2/3 to the x. All right, be back in your seats at 12:30. Xavier, you need to go to your locker room. I don't know, there's something going on, you need to go to the locker room.
Oh, I'm done.
All right? Back at 12:30.
You already